All right, guys. Good morning.
Did you make that graphic?
No, actually, I found that on the internet.
That's awesome.
You'd be surprised how many zombie images you can find on the internet. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about zombies and how it relates to Drupal automation and testing. Pretty excited about this. I will give you a little warning up front. This video is littered with shameless zombie references. I will keep it PG, so they're not. I'm not going to show anything very gory, but just to prepare you. Also, I'm not really sure why they put this presentation before lunch either. It's about zombies. Hopefully we won't have pasta. Yeah, hopefully we won't have pasta salad for lunch after this.
When's the rated R version?
Yeah, I can maybe do. I'll do that one later. All right, I'll do that at the Drupal meetup, the rated R version. So anyway, this is automating and testing Drupal with Zombie.js from bite to believing. You're going to be infected by me, Travis. That's my Twitter handle, Software Gnome. I'm also a lead developer at allplayers.com. Some of you guys know that company. Go check it out. You can also, I've got this entire presentation online, so you can actually follow along with me. Just go to that URL. I put it up there. It's reveal.js. And also you can go and fork the presentation, which will include the examples that I'm going to be showing, so you can copy and paste it into your own terminal. You can kind of walk through it with me. There will be code in this presentation. Hopefully that won't bother too many people in here, but you can't do this without too much code. However, for those of you who are not coders, it will be entertaining, to say the least. So, how does it all begin? It all starts with a bite. All right, so that's my objective in this section, is to kind of bite you with this notion of using the technology called Zombie.js. I'm going to start off by answering the question, what is Zombie.js? Well, first of all, it is an insanely fast and headless browser, and that's actually how it got its name. Just like zombies, it's insanely fast, and it's headless. Some of you are probably wondering, what does headless mean? I know a lot of you probably hear that around. I mean, what is a headless browser? Well, a headless browser is basically the same as a regular browser, except it doesn't have a UI. There's no window to view web pages. It's basically a document representation in code. So it's really cool, and I'll show you some of the benefits of having that. Also, it's written completely in JavaScript. I mean, everything about this browser is JavaScript. There's no compiled binaries. If you actually look at the source code, everything from the DOM to everything about it is done in JavaScript, which I love JavaScript, so that's why I fell in love with it. It's also powered by a technology called Node.js, and this is what really excites me about this technology. There are other headless browsers out there, but none that really are fully integrated with Node. And as I'm about to show you, there's some extremely big benefits to having Node in addition with a headless browser. You can pull in additional libraries that really make it powerful. I'm going to show all of that. And also, I just want to let you guys know that this works. This technology works on any website, not just Drupal. I know this is a Drupal camp. It should be about Drupal, but this presentation could easily be about WordPress because what I'm going to be showing you can easily translate to any website. So now you're probably asking, why do I even care about this? Well, first of all, you can automate anything in the Drupal UI. So if anything that you can do, like point, click, create node, anything that you can do in the UI, you can automate with this technology. You can also automate Drupal sites that you do not own. This is another big benefit of this. Like, you can automate using Drush. There's a lot of other technologies that you can use automation, but all of those technologies kind of make the assumption that whatever it is you're trying to automate, you own that server and can install these binaries on it. So this basically provides you the benefit of automating something that you do on a website that you don't even own. So for a great example, and I'll show you an example, me trying to automate stuff that I do on Drupal.org. It's also both an automation and testing tool. But the more I really played around with this, the more I was very intrigued by the automation aspects. So for those of you coming thinking that I'm going to be just talking about testing, I've got like one little section about testing. Pretty much the rest is about automation because to bring in the testing pieces is trivial. The automation part is what you really should understand. Also, headless basically equals continuous integration friendly, and Alan can come up here and tell you guys all about how painful it is to get Selenium to test to run on a headless environment. Continuous integration. So if you have deploy servers, you want to make sure that you test them. You want that to be automated. You want it to basically be within your build process. This will allow for that because it can be completely ran in the command line. And also it has full CLI support, allows for user input. I actually consider this probably one of the more powerful aspects about using Zombie.js is that if you use it with Node, you have full control of the console. You can have it stop, ask you questions. How do you want to automate? What do you want to do now? What do you want to do now? And you can literally tell the browser what to do as you move forward. And I'm going to be demonstrating that later in this presentation. And also, as I mentioned earlier, you can take advantage of any additional Node.js library out there. And there's thousands of libraries out there. And so, but last but not least, all of you guys are developers. And what do they say about developers? A good developer is a what developer? Lazy, that's right. Do you guys know why they say that? Because if you're a good developer and you keep doing something repetitive, you write something to automate it. So let's face it, guys, you're lazy. That's right. And everyone knows when it comes to lazy people and zombies, the lazy developers are bitten first. So, consider yourself bitten. All right? So after you've been bitten, what's the next phase? Does anyone want to know? Like, what happens after you've been bitten by a zombie? Glenn should know this, but you're infected by whatever it is. So the next task is infection. Let's figure out how to install this system on your own computer so you can use it. It's kind of easy. It should be a one-line command, but it's not. And I'll explain why it's not. This kind of irritated me because Node, what makes Node so attractive is you literally type one command using the Node package manager and it installs what you want. With Zombie, it's a little bit different, but I'll walk you through it, so hopefully that'll become easy. The very first step is actually very simple. You just go to nodejs.org and download and install Node. You just press that shiny green button on there. It doesn't matter if you're on a Windows machine, Mac machine, it'll install on your machine just fine. And it's really easy. There's a catch though. Zombie, it just does not jive with the latest version of Node. So yeah, that sucks. But still install it. Install the latest version because what you're going to install next is a very powerful tool called the Node Version Manager. And basically this tool is awesome. It's terminal session based. And you can open up a terminal and change your versions of Node within that session very easily. So to install it, you actually go to GitHub and go to CreationX NVM. That guy used to live in Texas. I mean, he's one of the big player in Node right now, but he's the one that created it. And for those who are on a Mac or Linux, you can do a simple curl command to install it, and that will just flat out install Node Version Manager on your machine. Very, very simple. For people on Windows, just go to that first URL, and he'll walk you through it, and I feel sorry for you. So once you've done that, it's really as simple as saying nvm install 0.8. And you'll just see it. It'll install it. And then to actually use it is, I'll show you how to use it after that, but really that's all you have to do. This is the part I hate. This is the part that really annoyed me about Zombie. You do need a C++ compiler on your machine. If you already have Xcode, don't worry about it. You've already got one. But for those of you who don't, if you're on Windows, there are pre-compiled binaries that will install it for you. Just go to there, click on one of those, and it'll install it. So we're still staying kind of within the little click wizard installation, but it is painful. I hate to say that. And if you're in Windows, I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. But yeah. So the next piece is to actually set up your project. Now that you have that, let's go and set up a project to actually use Zombie. So I'm going to go ahead and make a directory called Drupal Zombie. I'm going to change directories to Drupal Zombie, and then I'm going to create a file called package.json. Every single Node package requires this file. It tells you what versions you're using, what dependencies you have.
You did something wrong there. You used Nano.
I used Nano. I didn't want to use Nano. I wanted to use VI, but then I would have to have a presentation on how to use VI to create a package file. So that's why I didn't do that, because I'm a VI guy. So, I don't want to abuse the people who are trying to walk through this with me. So just use Nano, it's easier, even though it kind of sucks, but yeah. So then you're going to create this, and you're going to create a thing called dependencies, and you're going to say zombie. That's really all you have to do. And you're going to save that file. The next thing you're going to do is using the Node version manager, you're going to want to make sure you're using 0.8 of Node. And it's that easy. You just say npm use 0.8, and it will just use that version. And then you're going to say npm, which is the Node package manager install, and that's it. You are now infected. You'll see this thing go through. It'll compile the, do some compilations, and then it'll be done. It doesn't really take very long. But anyway, you're infected. That's how it works. So after you're infected, does anyone know what's the next step of being a zombie? After you're infected, yeah, you die and then you start walking, right? So now we're gonna walk a little bit. We're gonna get into some code. So this will be fun. So now you don't have to use nano. Just create a new file called app.js. It doesn't have to be called app.js. It can be called anything. But just for demo purposes, we're gonna call it app. And then really to create a new browser is something as easy as this. You just say browser equals require zombie. That's it. And then from there you're going to actually create an instance of a browser. And to do that you say new browser and you assign it a variable which is lowercase browser, but that variable can be called anything. So here's basically how we're going to start getting into the API. So let's say that you want that browser to visit a web page. You really say browser visit a string of the URL, and this thing after it, and I'm going to go into great detail on explaining this asynchronous and serial programming, so don't be too intimidated at this point by that callback function right there. Basically, that is a callback function that says, call this whenever you're done visiting, or that page has been visited. The next thing it's going to do is within that callback, you're going to say browser fill, and this is another reason why I love Zombie. You notice the edit keys? That's using Sizzle. It's using jQuery selectors. So all of you people out there who know jQuery, that's how you pinpoint an item on the page. It's just Sizzle, which is awesome. That's also a big difference between this and like Selenium, where Selenium kind of has its own language to find components on the page. This you just use Sizzle. The next piece is what I actually want to fill inside of it. So I'm giving it a string called zombie. That could be my first name. So it could be anything. So that is the string you want to fill that input with. And then another callback function. Whenever that's done, you're actually going to say browser press button, and that's another Sizzle selector called edit submit with, oh my god, another callback function. I will get into this here in a minute. And then when you're done, you can say console log, browser text, and you can print out what you want. So now let's talk about these callbacks, because they're painful. First of all, what do they mean? What is the difference between serial programming and asynchronous programming? And I really feel like in order for me to continue with this presentation, I have to go into just a little bit of an explanation on the difference between the two, because if you don't know that, it's going to be hard for us to move forward. So let's actually talk about that. Let's talk about asynchronous versus serial. And let's start with the easiest one first, which is serial execution. So basically, serial execution, it says, waits for one operation to end before starting the next. We're just going to do a very simple use case. We have two functions here, one called do something, the other one called do something else. All they do is just print something in the console. Serial basically says you can do something, and then right after that, you can do something else. Pretty easy stuff. And what is printed out is very expected. You have something, something else, in the same order that you called them. Things start getting a little bit interesting if they depend on one another. A great example is you have something called get something, which returns like a string, it could be anything. And then you have a function that says say something that takes a string and prints out the console. This is where it starts getting a little bit interesting, because in this case, you assign something to get something, and you then pass that to say something. Or if you just want to be really short about it, you can call get something within the say something parentheses, and it's the same thing. This is where it gets interesting. And I feel like, but still, what happens is expected, still. Where this gets even more interesting and what starts getting us into asynchronous programming is if get something depends on an asynchronous source. So what if get is actually not just returning something immediately? What if it's actually going out to a web page, like google.com, to get something? Okay, this is where it starts getting a little bit tricky. So to do that, you actually have to do a callback because it's not going to return it immediately. It's going to return its response within a callback function. And at this point, this is where most developers, whenever they first start this, they get really confused. They're like, okay, so what do I do here? Do I return the response? How does that work? Do I return it right there? And a lot of them, what they don't really realize is that this function doesn't return anything. You're calling something, you're not returning anything. And so what they'll end up doing is this right here will be null because it returns null. You're going to pass something null to say something, and you end up getting this in the console. And this is the part when programmers learn this for the very first time. And I mean, literally, it is like, what is happening? I mean, it's just like, I can't comprehend what this is doing. It's really, really confusing. So basically, how to fix this? We have to learn how to program asynchronously. And to do that, you're going to actually do a callback, pass a callback in to get something. And then whenever you get the response, you're going to call that callback with the value of that. This is still painful. I agree with you. This is still painful. But after I'm done with this presentation, we're going to fix all this. Trust me. So in order to get something, you're going to pass in that callback, and then you can say something, whatever it returns. This is how you would fix it. Okay? That's how you do asynchronous programming, and that's how you work with it. So let's actually go back to that very first example that I showed you guys. So now I think we can understand what's doing here. It waits for the response for something to happen, because everything in the browser is asynchronous. So it waits for that to happen, then it fills, then it waits for that to happen, then it presses the button, it waits for that to happen, then it console logs. So, but what happens if you have a really long test case? Let's say you want to press the button and fill this out, you want to press the button, I want to do something else. Your code starts looking something like this. And this really sucks. In fact, it's kind of like a zombie Matryoshka nightmare. I mean, how do I deal with this? Because a lot of people in programming, they call this callback hell. Whenever you hear that, they're like, okay, I'm in callback hell, and this is what they mean, is that your code is unreadable, it's unusable by anybody. So Zombie tries to fix this problem with something called a promise. And basically how promises works, promises is like a queue, so that you can call fill and then put a period and then call fill after that, and then you can do another period. So like you have almost like a serially looking piece of software, and then at the very end you press button and then you can do something inside that callback. And this is the part where people think, Mark Sonnenbaum, that Zombie is broken, because they try to use this. Oh, he's shaking his head. He doesn't agree. Oh, okay, all right. We had an argument last night about this. But anyway, a lot of people try to use it like this, and it breaks down. You can't really use promises because when you should and should not use a promise varies, for one. And another thing is whenever one promise has a dependency on another, so let's say that on the very first line, you want to fill your name with maybe the contents of another element on the page. So how would you do that using this? Like you would have to get the value and then somehow pass that to the next promise and say, I want you to fill it with this value of this. The point is it breaks down, and it breaks down in a very bad way. Let's actually look at another use case. Another example that will blow your mind. So let's try to iterate over a list of nodes in a view and do something with them. So the very first thing we're going to do, I'm going to use a library called underscore. I recommend everyone using that. I'm going to visit Drupal.org forum, and you guys can actually do this. You can do this in your console and go visit the forum in Drupal.org. From that, I'm actually going to get all the nodes, basically all the T-body TRs, which is basically the table. So I'm getting every single row within the table. And then what I'm going to do is I want to iterate over each one of those nodes. Okay, so far this is pretty trivial, right? And then I'm going to click on one of those links in there, go to the page, and console log the table. Can anybody tell me what's wrong with this? Just looking at it? Because it took me a while to figure out what's wrong with it.
Nodes is not populated.
No, Nodes is populated. Nodes is an array of nodes.
You know, waiting for the link to get back.
That's right. So what happens is, I'm iterating very quickly because underscore each is a very synchronous operation. I'm just iterating very quickly over those nodes and like clicking the button. It's the exact same thing that if you were on the browser and went click, 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 what's going to happen? The last one is, each subsequent click is going to cancel out the next one. And you're going to end up with something like this. And this is where people who are using Zombie are like, this is busted. This sucks. I don't like this. And I mean, you just get really bizarre results because the browser is not intended to do that. In fact, each click still is enabled on the browser, so that's why you get multiple firings. It's really hard to deal with, and this is another situation where your head explodes. Just because it's hard to understand. Oh, my GIF isn't moving. That's unfortunate. There it goes. I just had to show it again because I love it so much. So let's talk about a library that's going to solve your problems with this, okay? And in fact, I wish Zombie used this library because I don't think promises is the way to go with Zombie. Instead, what I'd like for you guys to look at is a library called Async.js. This library takes a different approach on asynchronous programming. It does not use promises. Instead, what it does is it uses asynchronous control flow instead of promises. And it does it in a very serially looking way, and it's really amazing to work with. It's also isomorphic, and for those of you who don't know what that means, isomorphic means you can run it in Node on the server. You can also run it in the browser. You can use it in both places. So this is a very powerful, very powerful library. So let's actually talk about installing Async.js. The first thing we're going to do is get into our package JSON file, and we're going to add that as a dependency. The next thing we're going to do is do npm install, and really that's it. It's installed. It's not that hard to install it. So let's actually look at a piece of async that's really going to help us out here. And it's called the series method on the async object. And the way this works is you pass an array, and each one of those arrays is a function that does something. Whenever the first one is done, you actually call done, and it moves on to the next. It's asynchronous control flow instead of promises. So you have the power to say, I'm done, and it moves on to the next. So now what we have to do is we have to translate Zombie.js to use this. What it actually ends up looking like. So yeah, let's actually look at this example, the one we saw before. So what that actually looks like in Zombie is this. And I know what you guys are thinking. That still sucks. But we're getting a little better. So we have this callback function done, browser visit. When it's done with that, visit that. Then it moves on to the next one, which fill keys done. It'll basically move on to the very last until it's completely done with everything. It calls this very last callback function, which prints out the title. This still sucks. But what I love about JavaScript is anytime when you see a pattern like this function done, function done, function done, you can actually do something really cool with JavaScript and mold it in any way that you want to and create a wrapper function. I like to call the wrapper function go. Basically what this is doing is this is taking the arguments that you pass into it. It's returning the signature that async.js expects, and then it pushes the done function, and then it calls the browser method. It applies those arguments to that method. So it literally takes what you just saw and turns it into something that looks like this. Now we're talking. This is easy to work with. Async series, go visit, search, go fill, edit keys, go press button, edit submit. It works. It works really well. And not only that, but it's fun. It's fun to do. You are no longer banging your head on the desk because it's not behaving the way you expect, because you always have control over what this is doing. Remember this nightmare iterating over the nodes? Let's do that. And keep in mind, what I showed you before didn't even work. To actually get that up there to work without async.js it's like a cluster of code that just you would not, it'd be hard to look at.
Did you do it?
Huh?
Did you do it?
I did it before I started using async. That's whenever I wrote it, I was like, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. So how would this look in async? First of all, you're going to create that series method. Okay? We're going to go visit the forum. Okay? The next thing we're going to do is, because we have to get all of the nodes on the page, we're going to pass that signature that async expects, which is that callback function with the done. The point is we get to decide when it's done at this point. So here I am getting the nodes. And then there's this method called async series in the async library. And basically it works a lot like each. If you actually look at what each series and what each does up there, it really kind of has the same signature. There's only one difference. That node done right there. That is another callback for you to basically tell the series, I'm done with this one little iteration, you can move on to the next in the series. And so other than that, it's really cut and dry. Here's my link. I'm going to browser fire the click on the console, and then when that's done, I'm gonna log it. But here's the big difference here. Okay, I'm done with you now. Async series, you can move on to the next node. And whenever it's completely done, you can then say I'm done with that, and then that'll actually go to the very end of the series, and this works beautifully. You can try it out in your console. It'll go and it'll click and print the title of every node within the Drupal form. So here's what the whole app looks like, for anybody who wants to copy and paste and just run it. So let's just talk a little bit about the methods that you want to care about with the async library. The first one you saw, it's called async series. Basically run an array of functions in series. Pretty cut and dry. Now there's a ton of methods in async, but these are the ones that I find myself using the most. Async each series, the one that you just saw about iterating over each item in the table. Pretty cut and dry. And then one more I definitely want to mention is one called whilst. It's like a while loop, but you decide when it's like a while loop but done asynchronously. But it's still, the API is very cut and dry. It's easy to understand. You're going to be using those a lot. So now, let's take what we just learned about Zombie, Async.js, and let's actually apply that to something we all know and love, Drupal. This is where I find that it becomes extremely powerful, is because Drupal, moving on to the next slide, has a standard menu system. So a lot of these things you can actually standardize into common methods and functions and just reuse it on any Drupal site, because Drupal site has this standard menu system. I would not recommend, however, you like clicking on links to get to menu items, because you can't guarantee that the theme that you're clicking on is even going to have that link on the page. But as far as the menu is concerned, you're pretty safe. And as I mentioned earlier, you do not need to be the admin of the site or server to automate. That's very, very powerful. And also command line arguments and prompts. I'm going to show this off to you guys, and I was very excited to. It really made it fun for me to automate stuff in Drupal by using command line arguments. So let's actually just do an example. Let's log into Drupal using async and Zombie.js. It's really easy. Go visit user. Go fill edit name with whatever you want it to be, admin. Go fill edit pass with whatever you want the password to be. And then you're going to press the submit button. And then when you're done, you're going to say you're logged in as admin. That is logging into Drupal using Zombie.js plus async. It's beautiful. I actually look at that and say that's very pretty code. It's easy to understand. It has a flow to it. You can understand what it's doing. So let's actually talk about code reuse. So we just did that, right? So what's even more cool is you can actually abstract pieces of functionality, put them in their own methods. So we'll create a function called login. Login takes 3 arguments: user, pass, and done when it's done. That gets called when it's done. So far, this is pretty cut and dry. The only difference is I actually pass that done method up there to the very bottom of this async, because that gets called when all the series are finished. So now this is what our code would look like. Async series, go log in. Here's my username and password. Very pretty, very, very easy to use. And then when you're done, you're logged in as admin. So now let's actually look at this and say, okay, I see a couple of problems here. The first one is I have to hard code the username and password into my tests. I don't want to do that. I do not want to hard code it. So the first thing that you're probably going to want to do is you're going to want to have some form of configuration file to go along with it. There is a library that everyone should be using whenever it comes to configurations called inconf. What I love about inconf, and it also brings in the power of Node, inconf not only allows you to provide a file, a JSON file, to give all your command line options, but you can also pass parameters to the actual execution, and you can do it that way. And I think there's other ways to store configurations. The point is this one little library with one API does them all. So installing is basically the same. You're going to add it to your dependencies. You're going to do npm install. And then we're going to create a config.json, which basically looks like this. You're going to put the host that you want to go to, the username, password, in a config.json file. And that's going to be right next to it. And that will basically run everything using the config. So to use it in your application, you basically assign the config variable to the inconf library. Then you're going to do this. Basically what this is saying is I want to be able to take arguments to my console. I want to take environment variables. That's another one. A lot of tests use environment variables to determine configuration. The point is this takes any form. You can use arguments, you can use environment variables, or you can pass in a file. And it basically like melds all of them together in a very neat, intuitive API. And then you pass that config.json file to the configuration.
What's really nice right there, what you have is a system of overriding too.
Yep, the order you put in is the order they override. That's exactly right. So if you're saying I want the config to be the default, but you can override with arguments, you would probably put those. And actually, I'm not totally sure about the order, so don't quote me on that. But you can determine priority based on the order you call those. So now we're actually going to get our browser, and you see something I'm doing different here. I'm calling config get host. That'll set the site for the browser to that host. We still have the go function and the login function that you guys saw earlier, but now our login looks like this. It's very pretty. You just say go log in to user, go get pass, and now we're logged in.
Except for you're saying we're logged in as admin.
Oh yeah, you're right, I did. What that should be is a config get user. You're right, I messed up. Heckler. Yeah. I knew you were going to heckle me about something. Okay, so now, what's another problem with this? I'm storing the password in a configuration file. I do not want to you don't want to do that on anything. You don't want to store the password anywhere. So let's get really cool about this, and let's change the password so it prompts you for it. So like as you run this thing, it's going to run. It's like, oh, you want to log into this account and give me your password. We're going to use a library called prompt for this. It's still done by the same guys that built Flatiron. Both of the inconf and prompt are within the Flatiron framework. But prompt is really cool because it gives you control over the command line. It's also pretty easy to install, just like everything in Node, except Zombie. Zombie's a nightmare. So to actually use this, we're going to actually create a prompt and say require prompt. And you just say prompt start. That's it. And it's really that easy. And then to other boilerplate code, the go login, etc. goes there. And so let's actually see what this thing looks like. So this is what it would look like before. So go login, get user, and then get password. But what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to stop the console and get the password first. So we do a async callback here. Then we call prompt get, and we pass in what we want to get, which is the password. Because you don't want to show the password in the console, we're going to say hidden true, which prompt supports. You just say hidden, don't show it. And then that's going to actually pass what you entered in the callback function as an argument in the callback function. So then we're going to set that in the config set pass, and then we're done with that. So then it moves on to the next one, and password's already set. It's really, really cut and dry, very, very easy here. And so now I know what you guys are thinking at this point. It's like, man, all of these things should be in a library. I really wish all of this boilerplate code that you just mentioned, all of this functionality should be in a boilerplate code. So I did. I created a library, which goes on to the believing part. I created a library called Drupal Go JS. And basically the premise of this package is it's a Node.js package to automate and test Drupal using Zombie.js. You can go find it. It's on my personal account page, so go check out the source code. Drupal Go JS. To install it, it's just Drupal Go on NPM. So I pushed it up to NPM so you can actually install it using that as well. So everything that I showed you. So let's actually talk about how do we use this. So you're going to create your package, and your package would simply look something like this. We still need async because async kind of has like this trickle-down effect. We still need the async to control how Drupal Go works. And then we're going to use it. You still have to use 0.8 of Node. I'm sorry, but you just have to. But NVM makes that easy. And then you're going to install. And then, of course, we're going to create a config file. Notice we're not putting password in there anymore. And the config file is basically the URL for the host and then whatever user account you want. So let's talk about how do we use this. So let's build an application using Drupal Go. So you're gonna say var Drupal equals require Drupal Go, and then you're going to use async. Then there's an API called load, and basically what that does is says load this configuration. You can load any configuration. You can call it something different if you want. The point is that config file gets loaded into Drupal. And then let's actually look at login. Let's look at what it looks like. And it's going to look very familiar, but Drupal Go basically is that signature that I just showed you guys. You just say async Drupal Go login, and it does that, and when you're done, you're done. Excuse me, I'm going to get a drink of water. Say what?
Whatever, Rubio.
Yeah. Okay, so let's actually move on so actually let's take a look at, for now, the API for Drupal Go is as follows. But I really hope you guys go out and fork this thing and start making pull requests, adding more Drupal-y stuff to it, because there's a lot of benefits there. So right now there's, of course, the Drupal Go function method, which is just a wrapper to return the async promises. There's login, which takes this signature, user pass, done. And that's another thing. Every API you notice, you can call these APIs by themselves. You don't need to use async with them. Like I could actually say Drupal login, user pass, and do a callback function that would also log into Drupal. So the way the signature works is you can call them independently, or if you want to do them in series, you use a series with Drupal Go, and that'll put it in the format you want. There's Drupal get param value done. So the value is the default here. What's cool about Drupal get is it looks in the configuration for it. If it can't find it, it prompts you for it. So Drupal get pass would just say, I can't find this anywhere, so it actually prompts you for it. Or you could pass in it. So you can say Drupal go get pass, and it looks and it's like, oh, I can't find it. It'll prompt you for it. The next one is, of course, set. So you can set a configuration variable. Every single one of these have the done function in them. You'll notice that. Another one is let's create a piece of content. You say Drupal create content, node, done. And the API is literally a node API, so like title, body, string, and that'll create a piece of content. It doesn't do fields yet, but go fork it. It's open source, people. Go fork it. Yeah, you just volunteered. Create multiple content. Actually, create multiple content is just a very simple wrapper. It uses async each series. It just does it for you of create content. So I love this one, each view item. What each view item does is first of all, you pass the context of the view. And that's a sizzle selector. Then you pass in a sizzle selector of what you consider an item in the view. So you decide what is an item in the view. And then what it does is it iterates over every single item in the view, and it calls that callback function. But here's where it's cool. It paginates for you. So it'll call every item. When it does that, it'll paginate to the next page, call every item. So you can literally, using the single API, iterate over every item in a view that you want, and it'll sit there and paginate for you. And all you have to do is do that callback function, and that'll just get called for every item in the view, each view item. Go out there, go have fun with it, and contribute your own. So let's go through some examples. I love examples. I love actually showing you how this thing works. So what I'm going to be doing here is creating a node. So the first thing you want to do is log in. Drupal go login. Easy enough. Drupal get title. So I want it to prompt you for the title. Or if you wanted to put it in configuration, you could. The point is if it can't find it, it's going to prompt you for a title. What do you want to call this node? Drupal go get title. That's why I like Drupal Go. It's like everything it's like reads how it should be. Like I wanted to call it like Go Gadget or something. Drupal Go Get whatever. The next one would be Drupal Go create content. You do a callback function. So the callback function is basically the way that works is the value. Keep in mind whenever that Go function is called originally, the value you don't really know what the value of the title is yet because it hasn't asked you for it. If you provide a callback for the value, what it does is it calls it when it executes that thing. So then I know Drupal config get title is going to be set at that point. And it's going to return the type of article title. Let's actually run this, show you what it looks like. So here's my example site. Looks like it's all good. Here is the examples folder. So if you go clone that repo that I showed you at the beginning, you'll see an examples folder. All right, so all I have to do is type node example 1. This just logged in, so it's asking me for my password. You notice you can't see it. Then it's like, oh, what do you want to call the title? It goes, it visits, it creates, and you're done. It just created a title, and I was able to provide the input to tell it what to create. Very cool. So now, let's actually look. So that's what the config looks like. Oh yeah, and I put that there because I said, if you don't want it to prompt you for the title, just put it in the config. And it'll just use it and move on its way. Yes?
What if you type in the wrong password? What's its...
It fails miserably. Go fork it and fix that. Yeah, right now. Yeah, Randall.
Are there a lot of assumptions that the classes and IDs are the standard Drupal classes and IDs, or is this fairly tolerant?
What do you mean the classes?
Inside of the theme, because we use Bootstrap-based themes now.
Yeah.
And so we do a lot of template overrides and change stuff out. So I mean, how hard is that of actually changing the theme significantly?
Well, I can show you the source code. I mean, I'm not going to say that. Oh my gosh, it handles it beautifully.
It works in the default.
But what I'd like to do at some point is make it so you can configure it. But I'll show you log in. So yeah, I mean it's assuming it's edit, pass, edit, submit. But we could potentially make those configurations.
Yeah, those are IDs though. I don't think those are going to be changed by the theme.
So like entering the title and stuff for the node.
Oh, and like what's required and what isn't required? Is that maybe I didn't understand your question?
No, I mean that was exactly you answered correctly.
Okay. Cool. I don't know how I answered your question, but okay. All right.
Do you use classes anywhere, assuming that classes are available within the theme? That's most
all browser-based.
I don't use classes.
Okay.
I just use IDs.
Okay.
For now. I mean,
Well, this is all in the browser, so classes aren't going to really.
yeah. In fact, the only classes I do use was like for that each view item, but you pass in the selector you want to target.
Perfect.
And so you decide on what is the view you want to target and what is each item. What's the selector for each item? You decide that when you pass that in.
Okay.
I'll show you an example of us doing that. Let's create content on the fly. So this time what I want to do is I just want to just keep putting titles in and just hitting enter and it just cranks through and just starts creating content. So I'm going to start with async series. I'm going to log in. I'm going to provide a callback function. And then here we go, whilst. You're going to get to see it. So whilst basically, the reason why I'm using whilst is I want to keep creating content until they enter nothing for a title. Then it's going to fall out of the while loop. Okay, so it's like while create content. If I hit enter, it's going to fall out and it's going to end. So that's actually what you see right here. The very first function callback in whilst is the condition that you want it to keep iterating over. And basically, I said keep iterating as long as get config title is not empty. Then I'm going to the second callback is basically what you want to iterate over. So this is like each iteration within the whilst function. And in here, you can actually use async series. You can use it over and over and over again. They don't collide with each other. I love that about it. I'm going to reset the title in the configuration to empty. It's the first thing I want to do because I don't want the next time it comes around and tries to get the title it's set from the previous one. But that's actually easy. Go set. Like this is what I love about this API. It's like Drupal Go accesses the Drupal set function, but because it has that same signature, I can say Drupal Go set title to nothing, and it like reads out like that. It's pretty intuitive. Then I'm going to say Drupal Go get title. Give me a new title. And then we're going to call the create function, create content, and I'm going to return that title. And that's really it. So it's going to iterate over. Oh, and then when I'm done, I'm going to say Node is done. It's going to continue with the will loop. And then there's the other done for the other series. Let's do it. So here I'm logging in. Goes and creates it. Keeps asking me for it. And notice how fast this is, and then I hit enter and it falls out. And then if I hit refresh, say what? It doesn't create anything because it requires a title. If it didn't, it'd probably create a node. So I mean, it still needs some work, but the point is I was sitting there in the command line just saying, yeah, I want that, I want that, kept hitting enter, and then I finally hit empty and it fell out. Let's do automated content creation. So the config file, you don't have to provide the set configurations for the config file. You can provide nodes. You can create a node and say, I want to create these nodes in it. So then let's say, then the method to do this, it's actually really, really short. I say Drupal go log in, and then there's a thing called create multiple content, and I pass in those nodes. That's it. To create multiple nodes, it just Drupal get nodes, and then I decide within the configuration what they look like.
You just renamed a node export.
So there it goes. And it's done. And I actually provided bodies on this one. There they are. Very slick. So the next one is, and I wanted to illustrate me actually going to a site that I don't own. I actually originally created this to try and automate, basically the same thing. I wanted to automate something on a site that I didn't own. So everyone who knows me and knows my modules knows I'm probably the worst module maintainer on Drupal.org. I'm very bad about maintaining my issues. So what I wanted to do was create a script that went to all my issues in the issue queue and automatically close them if they're a version I don't support anymore. Yeah, the Travis bot. The Travis bot is entered. All right, so here's what it looks like. And actually, I don't do the whole closing thing in this script, but it really is a very simple addition to this script, and it'll do it. So here I am. I'm go log in, go visit project issues media front, and then here's my each view item. So I decide what the main selector is, which is project issue project. I tell you what each item is, and then I pass in that function node done there. So for each view item, I want to get the browser version. So this is using Sizzle selectors. So the only problem is the XPath, because I wanted to find the version and then back up a little bit to get that node. So you can use XPath in Zombie. It's a little bit more complicated, but you can use it to traverse that DOM tree. And then I want to console log the version number, and then I'm done. Let's do this one. Keep in mind, this is actually going out to Drupal.org. I just did. So it is going to be a little bit slower. But then what you're also going to see from this, you're going to laugh because of how many issues I have, is it's paginating for me. There's all my issues. Yeah, so my next task is going to be to close those things off. I'll close them out if they're in a certain version. So I actually have the version number right there. It's printing out. And it's going through a review item. And then it reaches the end of the view and it kicks itself out. It's very cool. All right. Let's talk about extending real quick. So you guys are probably going to want to create your own methods. Extending is easy. It's very simple. It's as simple as doing something like that. So if you want to create one that's called edit node, it's that. And then as long as it has that done function at the end when it's done, I can now do Drupal login, Drupal create multiple content, and then I want to edit node that and pass in that parameter. Use Drupal go to edit, and that's how you do it. That's how you extend it. But I'd also like it If you guys do it extended like that and it's very Drupal generic, please create a pull request because I will most likely put it into the main repo. As I said, it's open source, so go fork it. Have fun. Really quick, I just want to talk about testing. I know we're almost done. So testing, you basically just use the assert. So you include it right there, require assert. When you're done, you want to say assert browser success, browser equal, and really that's testing. I mean, testing is like automation with just some checks along the way. I mean, that's really what testing is, and that's the bit of testing I'm going to talk about. So, tells you how much I care about it. No, I do. I care deeply for testing, but that's how you test. But like, I really wanted to stress that this tool I find more of an automation tool that you can use for testing if you want to.
So did you replace my headless solution with that?
Not yet, but I'm going to. It hasn't happened yet. And that's it, guys. So thank you. Here are all the references from this presentation. So you can go look at the presentation live. You can get the source. I am going to be posting this video on YouTube when I'm done. So you can go watch this again if you want to. There's the Drupal Go repository. There's my GitHub profile if you want to see some other stuff I've done. And there's my Drupal.org profile if you just want to come stalk me, check me out.
Sweet.
Yeah. So that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for attending.